The petty CEO laughed at his disabled wife while signing the divorce papers, but his face went pale when the judge spoke. Benjamin Sterling had just signed his name with a gold pen, laughing at his wheelchair-bound wife's limitations. 10 seconds later, his face drained of all color. Because Judge Williams wasn't reading divorce papers. He was reading an FBI indictment. 14 million in hidden assets. Federal charges that could mean 30 years in prison. And his helpless wife? She'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. The revenge she'd planned would leave him with absolutely nothing. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy this story. Because tomorrow, I have another beautiful story to share with you, and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now, let's get into the story. The morning sun cast harsh shadows through the tall windows of Sterling Industries' 42nd floor, where Benjamin Sterling stood like a king surveying his empire. At 34, he had built one of the most successful tech companies on the East Coast, and today felt like another victory to add to his collection. Mr. Sterling? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Your lawyer is here for the final briefing. Benjamin straightened his Armani tie and smirked. After 18 months of legal warfare, it was finally ending. Send him in. Richard Blackwell entered with a leather briefcase and the confidence of a man who never lost. Benjamin, everything's in place. Judge Williams will have no choice but to grant you full custody of Isabella and Sophia. And Aaliyah? Gets the house in Queens, minimal alimony, and supervised visitation every other weekend. Richard's smile was sharp as a blade. Your wife's condition worked in our favor. A woman in a wheelchair can hardly provide the stability 2 4-year-olds need. Benjamin's jaw tightened at the mention of the car accident that had changed everything. 2 years ago, Aaliyah had been rushing to pick up their twins from daycare during a thunderstorm. A drunk driver had run a red light, and in an instant his vibrant, dancing wife had become broken. He pushed the guilt away. That wasn't his fault. What was his fault was falling in love with her strength, her laugh, the way she used to spin the twins around their penthouse living room while music filled the air. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who needed help, who couldn't walk red carpets or attend galas, who reminded him daily of everything they'd lost. Good, Benjamin said, though the word tasted bitter. The girls need a normal life. They need their father's resources, Richard corrected, not their mother's limitations. Across town, in a small brick house in Queens, Aaliyah Sterling sat in her wheelchair at the kitchen table, reviewing documents with a public defender who looked barely out of law school. Sunlight streamed through the white curtains she'd sewn herself, illuminating the modest space she'd made into a home after Benjamin had asked her to leave the penthouse. Mrs. Sterling, I have to be honest, 26-year-old attorney Lisa Chen said, her voice gentle but strained. Mr. Sterling's legal team has significant advantages. The private investigators, the child psychologists, the financial resources. Aaliyah's dark eyes never left the custody papers spread before her. At 31, she'd already survived more than most people endured in a lifetime. Growing up in foster care, working 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school, meeting Benjamin at a hospital charity gala where she'd volunteered. She'd thought their love story was unbreakable. She'd been wrong about many things. What are you saying, Lisa? I'm saying that Benjamin Sterling has painted a very compelling picture of a successful father who can provide stability, private schools, opportunities. Lisa hesitated. While I'm the broken wife who can't walk. Aaliyah's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee cup. The simple wedding ring she still wore caught the light. That's not what I meant. But it's what they'll argue. Aaliyah had learned to be direct about harsh truths. That Isabella and Sophia deserve better than a mother who needs a wheelchair to chase after them. The sound of little feet thundering down the stairs interrupted them. 4-year-old Isabella burst into the kitchen, her curly hair wild from sleep, followed closely by her twin sister Sophia, who moved more cautiously, always the protector. Mommy! Isabella launched herself onto Aaliyah's lap, while Sophia pressed close to her side. Are we going to court today to see Daddy? Aaliyah's heart clenched as she wrapped her arms around her daughters. They still asked when Daddy was coming home, still saved drawings for him, still believed their family would be whole again. How do you explain to 4-year-olds that sometimes love isn't enough? Yes, baby girls. We're going to see Daddy today. Will he come home with us? Sophia asked, her thumb finding its way to her mouth, a habit that had returned after the separation. Before Aaliyah could answer, Lisa cleared her throat. Mrs. Sterling, there's something else. Something we discovered yesterday that changes everything. Aaliyah looked up sharply. What kind of something? Lisa pulled out a manila folder. Benjamin's company, Sterling Industries, has been under federal investigation for the past 6 months. Tax evasion, embezzlement, fraud. The FBI seized his accounts 3 days ago. The room went silent except for the twins' soft chatter as they colored at the table. He doesn't know we know, Lisa continued. His lawyer doesn't know we know. But if this comes out in court, his empire crumbles, Aaliyah whispered, pieces clicking into place. Benjamin's recent desperation to finalize the divorce, his insistence on rushed proceedings, his confidence about custody despite her being the children's primary caregiver since the accident. He wasn't just trying to take her children. He was trying to disappear with them before his whole world collapsed. What do we do? Aaliyah asked, though she already knew. She'd spent 2 years learning to fight from a wheelchair. Today, she'd discover she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. Lisa smiled for the first time since they'd met. We go to court, and we let Judge Williams know exactly who Benjamin Sterling really is. As Aaliyah prepared her daughters for what might be their last day of innocence, she couldn't shake the memory of Benjamin's hands in her hair, his whispered promises that they'd face anything together, the way he'd held her after the accident and sworn nothing would change between them. Some promises, she'd learned, were easier to break than others. What do you think will happen when Benjamin discovers his perfect plan is about to backfire? Share your predictions in the comments below. The Manhattan Family Court building stood like a monument to broken dreams, its limestone facade weathered by decades of tears and testimony. Benjamin Sterling adjusted his burgundy suit jacket as he climbed the steps, each footfall echoing with the confidence of a man who'd never truly lost anything that mattered. Richard Blackwell fell into step beside him, briefcase in hand. Remember, Benjamin, show appropriate concern for the children's welfare, but maintain your position of strength. Judge Williams respects decisive leadership. Don't worry, Benjamin's smile was cold as the October morning. I've been preparing for this moment for months. Inside courtroom 4B, the mahogany-paneled walls seemed to absorb sound, creating an atmosphere of solemn authority. Benjamin took his seat at the plaintiff's table, his expensive cologne mixing with the scent of old leather and legal documents. Behind him, his parents sat in the gallery, Sterling Industries board members who'd flown in from Connecticut to witness their son reclaim control of his life. The courtroom doors opened with a soft creak, and Benjamin's chest tightened involuntarily. Aaliyah entered in her wheelchair, wearing the same white dress from their wedding day. The symbolism hit him like a physical blow. She'd chosen to remind everyone, including him, of the vows he was about to legally shatter. But what struck him most was how beautiful she still looked. The morning light caught the elegant curve of her neck, the way her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. For a moment, he remembered tracing that same curve with his lips, whispering promises against her skin. He shook the memory away. That was before the accident, before everything changed. Aaliyah navigated her wheelchair to the defendant's table with the same grace she'd once moved across dance floors. Her young lawyer, Lisa Chin, helped arrange her papers while Isabella and Sophia sat quietly in the front row with Aaliyah's best friend, Mariah, who'd driven down from the Bronx. All rise for the Honorable Judge Harrison Williams. Judge Williams entered with the bearing of a man who'd spent 30 years untangling the worst of human nature. At 62, his silver hair and steady gaze commanded immediate respect. He'd presided over thousands of custody cases, and his reputation for fairness was matched only by his intolerance for manipulation. Please be seated. We're here today for the matter of Sterling versus Sterling, case number FC 2024-1847, concerning custody of minor children Isabella Rose Sterling and Sophia Grace Sterling, both age 4. Benjamin felt his pulse quicken with anticipation. He'd waited 18 months for this moment. "Mr. Blackwell, please present your opening statement." Richard stood, his silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Your Honor, my client, Benjamin Sterling, is a successful businessman who has built a multi-million-dollar technology company from the ground up. He provides a stable, financially secure environment and seeks primary custody of his daughters to ensure they receive the advantages and opportunities they deserve." Benjamin nodded approvingly as Richard painted the picture they'd carefully crafted. The devoted father, the provider, the stable influence. "Furthermore, Your Honor, while Mr. Sterling respects his wife's courage in dealing with her disability, the reality is that Mrs. Sterling's physical limitations significantly impact her ability to provide proper supervision and care for 2 active 4-year-olds. Aaliyah's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. Benjamin watched her hands clench slightly in her lap. The same hands that had once painted murals on their daughter's bedroom walls. The same hands that had held him through panic attacks when Sterling Industries nearly went bankrupt in its early days. "Mr. Sterling seeks full custody with supervised visitation for Mrs. Sterling every other weekend," Richard concluded. "This arrangement serves the best interests of Isabella and Sophia Sterling." Judge Williams nodded and turned to the defense table. "Ms. Chen." Lisa stood on unsteady legs, clearly outmatched but determined. "Your Honor, Aaliyah Sterling has been the primary caregiver for Isabella and Sophia since birth. Despite the challenges she's faced since her accident, she has maintained a loving, stable home environment where the children thrive." Benjamin suppressed a snort. "Stable? A 2-bedroom house in Queens versus his penthouse on the Upper East Side? Mrs. Sterling's disability does not diminish her capacity for love, guidance, or parenting. She seeks joint custody with a fair division of time that prioritizes the children's emotional well-being over financial considerations." Judge Williams made notes as both lawyers presented their cases. Character witnesses testified. Benjamin's business associates spoke of his leadership and success, while Aaliyah's neighbors and the twins' teachers described a devoted mother who never missed a school event, despite the challenges of navigating the world in a wheelchair. Then came the moment Benjamin had been waiting for. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Williams called, "please approach for the signing of preliminary custody arrangements pending my final decision." Benjamin stood, straightening his tie with satisfaction. The preliminary arrangements heavily favored him. Temporary custody, supervised visits for Aaliyah, all designed to establish precedent for the final ruling. He walked to the table where the documents waited, feeling the weight of every gaze in the courtroom. This was it. The moment he reclaimed control. Richard handed him an expensive gold pen, a gift from the Sterling Industries board. "Just sign where indicated, Benjamin." As Benjamin picked up the pen, he couldn't resist glancing back at Aaliyah. She sat perfectly still in her wheelchair, her hands folded, watching him with those dark eyes that had once looked at him with such love. "You know, Aaliyah," he said, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom, "I really should thank you for making this so easy." The words hung in the air like poison. Lisa Chen shot to her feet. "Your Honor, that's inappropriate." But Benjamin was just getting started. The months of guilt, resentment, and self-justification poured out in a moment of cruel triumph. "I mean, let's be realistic here," he continued, his pen hovering over the signature line. "This is what happens when someone becomes a burden instead of a partner. I need a wife who can stand beside me at galas, someone who can represent Sterling Industries with dignity. Not someone who—" He gestured dismissively toward her wheelchair, and the casual cruelty of it made several people in the gallery gasp. "Benjamin!" His own mother hissed from behind him, but he was beyond stopping. "The girls need a parent who can chase them on the playground, who can dance at their weddings someday, who can give them a normal life. Not someone trapped in." "Mr. Sterling." Judge Williams's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. Benjamin looked up, pen still in hand, suddenly aware that every person in the room was staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. "That is quite enough," the judge continued, his voice deadly quiet. "Please sign the documents and return to your seat." Benjamin shrugged, feeling vindicated. He'd said what everyone was thinking anyway. He signed his name with a flourish, the gold pen catching the light. What would you do if you witnessed someone treating their spouse this cruelly in public? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Some situations reveal who people really are. "Now," Judge Williams said, removing his glasses to clean them slowly, "before I proceed with my preliminary ruling, I feel compelled to address something that has come to my attention." Benjamin settled back in his chair, confident and relaxed. Richard gave him a thumbs up from across the table. "Mr. Sterling, are you familiar with Federal Case Number 2024, CR 889? The blood drained from Benjamin's face. That was impossible. The investigation was sealed. Confidential. No one knew except the FBI and his company's internal legal team. "Your Honor, I'm not sure what you're referring to," Benjamin said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. Judge Williams put his glasses back on and picked up a thick manila folder. "This is very interesting reading, Mr. Sterling. It seems the Federal Bureau of Investigation has been conducting a thorough investigation into Sterling Industries for the past 6 months." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Benjamin felt Richard's hand grip his shoulder as his lawyer leaned forward in shock. Tax evasion, embezzlement, wire fraud, securities fraud. Judge Williams read from the document. Quite an impressive list of federal charges. The FBI froze your personal and business accounts 3 days ago, pending indictment. Benjamin's world tilted sideways. This couldn't be happening. The investigation was supposed to be confidential. His lawyers had assured him. "Your Honor," Richard stammered, "we weren't aware of any federal investigation." "Of course you weren't, Mr. Blackwell. Because your client has been deliberately concealing this information while rushing through divorce proceedings." Judge Williams's gaze fell on Benjamin like a hammer. "Tell me, Mr. Sterling, were you planning to flee the country with those children once this custody arrangement was finalized?" The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Benjamin could hear his own heartbeat, could feel sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool October air conditioning. "Your Honor, I can explain." "I'm sure you can." Judge Williams set the folder down with a heavy thud. "But first, let me share something else that's come to my attention." He picked up another document, and Benjamin felt his last shred of hope crumble. "This is a forensic accounting report commissioned by Mrs. Sterling's legal team. It shows that over the past 2 years, you have systematically transferred marital assets into offshore accounts, hidden property acquisitions, and established shell companies, all while telling your wife you were struggling financially and couldn't afford her medical treatments." Aaliyah's sharp intake of breath was audible across the courtroom. Benjamin turned to look at her and saw tears running down her cheeks. Not tears of sadness, but tears of betrayal, so deep it was like watching someone bleed. "The report estimates you've hidden approximately $14 million in marital assets," Judge Williams continued. "Money that should have been available for your wife's medical care, your children's needs, and your family's welfare." Benjamin's mother stood up in the gallery. "Harrison, this is a mistake." "Mrs. Sterling," the judge addressed Benjamin's mother directly, "your son is facing federal charges that could result in 20 to 30 years in federal prison. The FBI will be here within the hour to take him into custody." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Reporters who'd been covering what they thought was a routine custody case suddenly realized they were witnessing the downfall of one of New York's most prominent young businessmen. Benjamin looked at the papers he'd just signed. Papers that were now worthless, like everything else in his life. His empire, his reputation, his future, all crashing down because of his own greed and arrogance. But it was Aaliyah's face that broke him. She was looking at him with an expression he'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but complete and utter disappointment. The same way you'd look at a stranger who'd betrayed everything you'd ever believed about human decency. "Your Honor," she said quietly, her voice somehow carrying across the chaotic courtroom, "I'd like to make a statement." Judge Williams banged his gavel repeatedly. Order! Order in my courtroom. When the noise died down, he nodded to Aaliyah. Please proceed, Mrs. Sterling. Aaliyah wheeled her chair forward, and Benjamin watched her move with the same dignity she'd shown throughout their entire marriage. Through his late nights building the company, through the accident, through his gradual withdrawal from their family. Your Honor, she began, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. 2 years ago, I was rushing to pick up my daughters from daycare because my husband had to work late. Again, I was so focused on being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, on holding our family together while he built his empire, that I didn't see the drunk driver who ran the red light. She paused, looking directly at Benjamin. When I woke up in the hospital, unable to feel my legs, do you know what my first thought was? Not about my career as a nurse, not about dancing, not about all the things I'd lost. My first thought was, how am I going to take care of Isabella and Sophia? Benjamin felt like he was drowning in her words. But then my husband held my hand and promised me that nothing would change between us. That we'd face this together. That love was stronger than anything. Her voice broke slightly. I believed him. The courtroom was completely silent now, hanging on every word. For 2 years, I've watched him pull away from our family. I've watched him look at me like I'm broken, like I'm something to be ashamed of. I've watched him tell our daughters that Mommy can't do things anymore, instead of showing them that Mommy just does them differently. She wheeled closer to Benjamin's table, and he could see the pain in her eyes, pain he'd caused. But I never imagined that while I was struggling to afford my physical therapy, while I was clipping coupons and shopping at thrift stores to make ends meet, while I was telling our daughters we couldn't afford dance classes anymore, I never imagined he was hiding millions of dollars. The weight of his betrayal hit him like a physical blow. All those nights she'd stayed up late, working on freelance medical consulting to pay for Isabella's speech therapy. All the times she'd worn the same dress to church because they couldn't afford new clothes. All the medical appointments she'd cancelled because of financial constraints. He'd let her believe they were struggling while he stashed away millions. Your Honor, Aaliyah continued, I don't want his money. I never did. But I want my daughters to know that love isn't conditional on perfection, that family means standing by each other when things get hard, and that a person's worth isn't measured by what they can or cannot do with their body. She turned her wheelchair to face Benjamin directly. Benjamin, you said I became a burden. But the truth is, you became a coward. And our daughters deserve better than that. Judge Williams cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 decades of legal experience. Mr. Sterling, in 30 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a clear-cut case of manipulation, fraud, and emotional abuse. Your behavior in this courtroom today has shown me exactly what kind of man you are. Benjamin felt the walls closing in as the judge continued. Therefore, I am awarding full physical and legal custody of Isabella Rose Sterling and Sophia Grace Sterling to their mother, Aaliyah Sterling. Mr. Sterling, your visitation rights are hereby suspended pending the resolution of your federal criminal charges. The gavel came down like thunder. Furthermore, I am ordering the immediate seizure of all assets you have hidden from this court and their return to the marital estate. Mrs. Sterling, you will receive full compensation for all marital assets your husband fraudulently concealed. Benjamin tried to stand, tried to speak, but no words came. This wasn't possible. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Finally, Judge Williams said, his voice now carrying a note of personal disgust, Mr. Sterling, I want you to understand something. Your wife didn't become broken in that accident. Your marriage didn't end because she couldn't walk. It ended because you chose cruelty over compassion, greed over love, and pride over family. The judge looked toward the back of the courtroom, where federal agents were already entering. Your Honor, one of the agents called out, we have a warrant for Benjamin Sterling's arrest. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Benjamin looked one last time at Aaliyah. She was holding Isabella and Sophia, who had run to their mother when they realized Daddy was in trouble. The 3 of them formed a circle of love and protection that he'd chosen to abandon. I'm sorry, he whispered, but the words were lost in the chaos of his arrest. Aaliyah didn't respond. She was too busy wiping her daughter's tears and promising them that everything would be okay now. And for the first time in 2 years, she actually believed it might be true. The spring morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Aaliyah's new apartment on Manhattan's Upper West Side, painting golden rectangles across the hardwood floors. She sat in her wheelchair at the breakfast island, watching Isabella and Sophia giggle over their pancakes, and for the first time in years, felt something she'd almost forgotten: peace. The apartment was everything the Queen's house wasn't: spacious, accessible, filled with light. When the forensic accountants had finished their work, they'd recovered over $16 million in hidden assets, money that had always rightfully belonged to their family. But more than the financial security, it was the freedom from Benjamin's manipulations that made her feel truly wealthy. "Mommy, can we go to the park today?" Sophia asked, syrup dripping down her chin. "And can we bring our bikes?" Isabella added, bouncing in her chair. Aaliyah smiled, remembering how Benjamin used to discourage bike rides, claiming it was too dangerous for her to supervise. Now she had a specially modified bike that attached to her wheelchair, allowing her to keep pace with the twins anywhere they wanted to explore. "Of course, baby girls. But first, Mommy has a video call with Daddy." The twins' faces grew serious. They'd been seeing Dr. Rachel Martinez, a child psychologist, twice a week since the court case. The trauma of watching their father arrested had been significant, but children were remarkably resilient when surrounded by love and honesty. "Is Daddy still in the sad place?" Isabella asked. That's how they'd learned to describe federal prison. The sad place where Daddy had to go because he'd made some very bad choices with money that wasn't his. "Yes, sweetheart. But remember what Dr. Martinez taught us? Sometimes people we love make mistakes, and they have to face consequences to become better people." Aaliyah's phone buzzed with an incoming video call from Metropolitan Correctional Center. She'd been surprised when Benjamin had requested these weekly calls 6 weeks ago. His lawyer had advised against any contact, but Benjamin had insisted, claiming he needed to speak with his daughters. The screen flickered to life, revealing Benjamin in an orange jumpsuit, looking thinner than she'd ever seen him. Prison had stripped away his polished veneer, revealing hollow cheeks and eyes that held a haunting vulnerability. His usually perfectly styled hair was shorter, grayer, and his hands, once manicured and soft, now bore the calluses of kitchen duty. "Hi, Daddy," the twins chorused, waving at the screen. "Hello, my beautiful girls." Benjamin's voice was hoarse with emotion. "Have you been good for Mommy?" As the twins chatted about their week, dance class, the new playground, their friend Sarah's birthday party, Aaliyah studied Benjamin's face. Something had changed in the past months. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like remorse. "Isabella, Sophia," Benjamin said gently, "Daddy needs to talk to Mommy for a few minutes. Can you go get ready for the park?" The twins scampered off, and suddenly Aaliyah was alone with the man who'd once been her everything, then her tormentor, and now, she wasn't sure what he was. "You look good," Benjamin said quietly. "Happy?" "I am." The words came easier than she'd expected. "The girls are thriving. Isabella's speech has improved dramatically since we could afford regular therapy again. Sophia's anxiety is almost completely gone." Benjamin flinched as if she'd slapped him. "Aaliyah, Benjamin, if you called to apologize again, you don't need to. We've moved past that." "No," he said urgently, leaning closer to the camera. "I need you to understand something. I've been seeing a therapist here, Dr. Williams, and I've learned. God, Aaliyah, I've learned so much about myself that I wish I'd known before." Aaliyah remained silent, but something in his tone made her lean forward slightly. "I was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder," Benjamin continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know what that means? It means that my entire life, I've been incapable of seeing past my own needs, my own pain. When you had the accident, all I could think about was how it affected me, how it made me feel helpless, how it changed our social status, how it reminded me of my own mortality." Tears were flowing down his cheeks now, and Aaliyah found herself gripping her phone tighter. I never once considered how scared you must have been, how much pain you were in, how hard you were fighting just to be the mother our girls needed. I was so consumed with my own selfish fear that I convinced myself you were the problem. Aaliyah felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, but shifting, like ice beginning to thaw. The money, hiding the money. Dr. Williams says it was about control. If I could control our finances, our future, I could control the narrative. I could make myself the victim instead of the villain. Benjamin's laugh was bitter and broken. But I was always the villain, wasn't I? Have you ever been in a relationship where someone's past trauma made them hurt the people they loved most? Sometimes healing requires brutal honesty. Share your thoughts below. Benjamin. Aaliyah started, but he held up his hand. Please let me finish. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did to you, to our family, was unforgivable. But I need you to know that every single day in here, I wake up and hate myself for what I put you through. Every single day, I think about how brave you are, how strong, how you never once complained or gave up. He paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I think about the night after your accident, when you cried in my arms because you thought you'd never be able to dance with our girls at their weddings. And I held you and promised that I'd dance for both of us if I had to. Do you remember that? Aaliyah did remember. It was one of the few times after the accident that Benjamin had been completely present, completely loving. I've been taking dance lessons, Benjamin said, his voice so quiet she had to strain to hear. Here in prison. There's a guy named Carlos who teaches salsa to anyone who wants to learn. I know it sounds crazy, but I thought, maybe someday, if you ever forgave me enough to let me back into the girls' lives, I could keep that promise. The silence stretched between them, filled with years of pain and love and betrayal and hope. I'm not asking for anything, Benjamin rushed to add. I'm not asking you to wait for me, or to forgive me, or to give me another chance. I needed you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not the money, not the company, not my reputation. I lost the most incredible woman I've ever known, and the chance to be the father our daughters deserved. Aaliyah found herself crying. Not the bitter tears of anger she'd shed for months, but something softer, more complex. How long? She asked. What? How long is your sentence? Benjamin looked down at his hands. With the plea deal, 15 years. I'll be eligible for parole in 8 if I maintain good behavior and continue therapy. 8 years. Isabella and Sophia would be 12. Teenagers who might not even remember the man their father used to be. I've been writing them letters, Benjamin said. One for every birthday I'll miss, every Christmas, every first day of school. I want them to know that even though Daddy made terrible mistakes, I never stopped loving them. I'm giving the letters to Dr. Williams. If you ever think they're ready to read them. Benjamin. Aaliyah's voice was steady, but her heart was racing. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. If I hadn't been in that accident, would you have still hidden the money? Still cheated on our taxes? Still built your empire on lies? Benjamin was quiet for a long moment, and Aaliyah could see him wrestling with the question. I don't know, he said finally. And that terrifies me, because it means that maybe I needed to lose everything, including you, to finally become someone worth knowing. After the call ended, Aaliyah sat in her kitchen for a long time, staring at the engagement ring she'd finally taken off 6 months ago. It sat in a small dish on the counter, next to her keys and sunglasses, no longer painful to look at, but not ready to be put away completely. The twins returned, dressed for the park in matching pink jackets, and Aaliyah pushed thoughts of Benjamin aside. Whatever he was going through in prison, whatever growth he claimed to be experiencing, her priority was the 2 little girls who needed her to be fully present. Ready, Mommy? Isabella asked, already heading for the door. Ready, Aaliyah replied, tucking her phone into her purse and following her daughters toward the elevator. But as they rode down to the lobby, she couldn't shake the image of Benjamin in that orange jumpsuit, tears on his cheeks, talking about learning to dance in prison, so he could someday keep a promise he'd made to her in their darkest hour. The Sterling Industries building still dominated the Manhattan skyline, but now it bore a different name: Phoenix Tech Solutions. The federal government had sold Benjamin's company to pay restitution to investors and creditors, and the new owners had offered Aaliyah something unexpected: a position as Director of Employee Wellness. Your background in nursing, combined with your personal experience overcoming challenges, makes you uniquely qualified to help our staff navigate health issues and workplace accommodations, the CEO, Maria Rodriguez, had explained during the interview. Now, 3 months into the job, Aaliyah found herself in the penthouse office that had once been Benjamin's, transformed into a wellness center complete with meditation spaces, physical therapy equipment, and counseling rooms. Mrs. Sterling? Her assistant, James, knocked on the open door. Your 3 p.m. is here. Rebecca Chun from accounting. Aaliyah nodded, saving the employee wellness report she'd been working on. Rebecca was a young accountant who'd been struggling with anxiety since her mother's cancer diagnosis. In her old life, Aaliyah might never have known such personal details about a colleague. Now, helping people navigate life's challenges while maintaining their careers had become her calling. Rebecca, come in. How are you feeling today? As she guided Rebecca through breathing exercises and discussed flexible work arrangements for medical appointments, Aaliyah reflected on how much her life had changed. The work was fulfilling in a way that nursing had been, but with an added dimension. She was living proof that life's worst moments didn't have to define its future chapters. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez. Girls are doing beautifully. Isabella asked today if Daddy might be getting better in the sad place. How are you feeling about that possibility? The question had been coming up more frequently. The twins missed their father, and despite everything he'd done, they loved him. Dr. Martinez had been preparing them for the possibility that someday, if Benjamin continued his treatment and proved genuine change, supervised visits might be appropriate. But every time Aaliyah considered it, she remembered his cruel laughter in the courtroom, his dismissive gesture toward her wheelchair, the years of lies and manipulation. Could people really change that fundamentally? And even if they could, did that mean she owed him, or their daughters, the chance to find out? Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Benjamin's weekly call. Hello, she answered, stepping out onto the balcony that overlooked Central Park. Aaliyah. Benjamin's voice was different today, excited, nervous. I have news. What kind of news? I'm being transferred to a minimum security facility upstate. And there's a possibility of supervised visits. With the girls. If you approve it. Aaliyah's grip tightened on the phone. She'd known this moment would come eventually, but she wasn't prepared for the complicated emotions that flooded through her. Benjamin, I know it's a lot to ask. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But Aaliyah, I've been clean and sober for 9 months. I've been in therapy twice a week. I've completed anger management, financial responsibility courses, parenting classes. His voice broke slightly. I've learned to dance salsa, merengue, and waltz. I want to keep my promise to you. Aaliyah closed her eyes, feeling the warm summer breeze on her face. Below, she could see families in the park. Parents pushing strollers, children on playground equipment, couples walking hand in hand. What does your therapist say about visits? She asked. Dr. Williams thinks I'm ready for supervised contact. But he also said the decision has to be yours, and whatever you decide, I have to respect it completely. A long silence stretched between them. I need time to think, Aaliyah said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. As she hung up the phone, Aaliyah realized she was at another crossroads. For the first time since the divorce, she had to consider not just what was best for her healing, but what might be best for Isabella and Sophia's long-term emotional health. Did they deserve the chance to know their father as a changed man? Did she have the right to deny them that possibility, even if it meant risking her own heart again? Standing 42 floors above the city, where her life had been shattered and rebuilt, Aaliyah Sterling faced the hardest decision she'd ever had to make. And this time, she would have to make it not as the broken woman who'd once been wheeled into that courtroom, but as the strong, successful, independent woman she'd become. The woman who'd learned that sometimes the greatest courage wasn't in protecting yourself from pain, but in risking your heart one more time for love. The minimum security facility in upstate New York looked more like a college campus than a prison, with red brick buildings surrounded by carefully maintained lawns and flower gardens. Aaliyah sat in her car in the visitor parking lot, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the main entrance. Isabella and Sophia were strapped into their car seats behind her, unusually quiet. They'd driven 2 hours to get here, and the twins seemed to sense the magnitude of what was about to happen. "Mommy," Sophia said softly, "what if Daddy doesn't remember how to hug us?" The question broke Aaliyah's heart. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that their father had been broken long before he went to prison, and that sometimes people have to learn how to love all over again? "Daddy will remember, baby girl." Love is something people never really forget, even when they make mistakes. Dr. Martinez had prepared them extensively for this moment. The child psychologist had spent hours with the twins, role-playing different scenarios, teaching them that it was okay to feel confused or scared or excited all at the same time. "Are you scared, Mommy?" Isabella asked, always the more perceptive of the two. Aaliyah turned to look at her daughters, Benjamin's eyes staring back at her from their beautiful faces. "A little bit, sweetheart. But sometimes being brave means doing something even when you're scared." She'd agonized over this decision for 2 weeks. The nights she'd lain awake, staring at the ceiling and weighing every possible outcome. The long conversations with Dr. Martinez about protecting the girls versus giving them the chance to have a relationship with their father. The phone calls with her best friend Mariah, who'd argued both sides depending on Aaliyah's mood. But ultimately, it had been a letter from Benjamin that convinced her. Not one of his usual calls, but an actual handwritten letter that had arrived 3 days ago. In it, he'd written something that changed everything. "Aaliyah, I know you're considering whether to bring the girls for a visit, and I want you to know that whatever you decide is the right choice. If you decide they're not ready, or that I'm not ready, I will understand completely. But if you do come, I want to make you a promise. I will never, ever put you in a position where you have to choose between protecting our daughters and giving me a chance. If you see anything at all, that makes you uncomfortable, if I say one wrong word or make one gesture that reminds you of who I used to be, you can take them and leave, and I will never ask for another visit. Your judgment, your comfort, your healing, those come first. Always. The girls deserve a mother who feels safe and confident, more than they deserve a father who might still be learning how to love them properly." It was the first time since their marriage began that Benjamin had put her needs before his own desires. And somehow, that gesture of selflessness had given her the courage to take this risk. "Ready?" she asked the twins. "Ready," they chorused, though Sophia clutched her stuffed elephant a little tighter. The visitor processing was thorough, but kind. The staff seemed to understand that children visiting incarcerated parents needed extra care and attention. A social worker named Jennifer Walsh met them at the entrance. "Mrs. Sterling? I'm Jennifer. I'll be supervising today's visit." She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Girls, I'm so excited to meet you. Your daddy has told me so much about you." As they walked through the facility, Aaliyah was struck by how different it was from the harsh concrete and steel she'd imagined. The visiting room was bright and welcoming, with children's books and toys in one corner, and large windows that let in natural light. "Now," Jennifer explained as they took their seats at a round table, "Daddy will be here in just a minute. He's very excited to see you, but he might seem a little nervous too. That's okay. It's normal to feel nervous when you're seeing people you love after a long time." The door opened, and Benjamin walked in. Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. The man who entered the visiting room bore little resemblance to the arrogant CEO who'd laughed at her in that courtroom. He was thinner, yes, but there was something else, a humility in his posture, a softness around his eyes that hadn't been there even in their early marriage. He'd grown a beard, neat and well-trimmed, and his orange jumpsuit was pressed and clean. But it was his expression that made Aaliyah's heart skip. Pure, overwhelming love and gratitude as his eyes found his daughters. "Isabella. Sophia." His voice was barely a whisper. The twins looked at Aaliyah uncertainly. She nodded encouragingly. "Hi, Daddy," Isabella said shyly. "Hi, my beautiful girls." Benjamin knelt down to their level, his eyes filling with tears. "You've grown so much. Look how tall you are." Sophia took a tentative step forward, then another, until she was close enough to touch her father's face. "Daddy, why are you crying?" "Because I'm so happy to see you, sweetheart. These are happy tears." Isabella, not to be outdone by her sister, ran the remaining distance and threw her arms around Benjamin's neck. The sob that escaped him was raw and primal, the sound of a man who'd thought he might never hold his children again. Aaliyah watched the reunion through her own tears, her hand unconsciously moving to her chest where her heart was hammering against her ribs. The love between Benjamin and the girls was undeniable, untainted by his mistakes, pure in the way that only a parent-child bond can be. "We brought you pictures," Sophia announced, pulling a construction paper folder from her backpack. "And we made you cookies, but the lady at the front desk said we can't bring food in." "That's okay, baby girl. Tell me about the pictures." For the next hour, Aaliyah sat and watched Benjamin be the father he'd never quite managed to be before prison. He was present, completely, utterly present, in a way he'd never been when he was building his empire. He listened to every word the twins said, asked thoughtful questions about their friends and school and favorite colors and dreams. When Isabella told him about her dance recital, his face lit up. "You're taking dance classes? What kind of dance?" "Ballet and jazz. Mommy says when I'm bigger, I can try hip-hop too." Benjamin glanced at Aaliyah, and she saw something flicker across his face, gratitude mixed with regret. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Your mommy is a beautiful dancer. Did you know that? She taught us how to do the spinning thing in our wheelchair games," Sophia said matter-of-factly. Benjamin's brow furrowed. "Wheelchair games? Mommy has this super cool wheelchair that goes really fast, and sometimes she lets us ride with her, and we pretend we're racing cars or flying like airplanes," Isabella explained. "And she can do tricks. Show him, Mommy." Aaliyah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Girls, this isn't the place for." "Please, Mommy," both twins pleaded. Jennifer smiled. "It's okay, Mrs. Sterling. We have space." Reluctantly, Aaliyah maneuvered her wheelchair to an open area of the visiting room. The chair was a high-end sports model she'd been able to afford after the asset recovery. Lightweight, responsive, built for an active lifestyle rather than medical necessity. She demonstrated a few basic maneuvers, quick turns, backing up while spinning, even a small wheelie that made the twins clap and cheer. When she looked back at Benjamin, he was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "That's incredible," he said softly. "You're incredible." The twins chatted excitedly about their mother's tricks, and Benjamin listened with rapt attention, but Aaliyah could feel his eyes returning to her again and again throughout the visit. As the hour wound down, Jennifer gave them a 5-minute warning. "Daddy," Sophia said seriously, "when are you coming home?" The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Benjamin looked at Aaliyah, then back at his daughters. "I made some very serious mistakes, sweetheart, and I have to stay here for a while longer to make sure I've learned how to be a better person. But no matter where I am, I love you and your sister and your mommy more than all the stars in the sky." "Do you love Mommy even though she uses a wheelchair?" Isabella asked with 5-year-old directness. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears again. "I love Mommy because she's the strongest, bravest, most beautiful person I've ever known. The wheelchair doesn't change that. If anything, it makes her even more amazing because she shows you girls every day that you can do anything you set your mind to, no matter what challenges you face." He looked directly at Aaliyah as he spoke, and she felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of a knot she'd carried for 3 years. "Time's up," Jennifer said gently. The goodbyes were tearful, but not traumatic. Benjamin hugged each girl tightly, whispering things in their ears that made them giggle and nod seriously. Then he knelt in front of Aaliyah's wheelchair. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me this chance, for raising them to be so incredible. His voice broke. "For being you." Aaliyah found herself reaching out to touch his hand, the first physical contact they'd had in over a year. "Benjamin," she said quietly, "I need to ask you something. Anything. That day in court, when you said those things about me being a burden." She paused, gathering courage. "Did you mean them?" Benjamin closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were full of such pain that Aaliyah almost regretted asking. "In that moment, yes. I meant them. And I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I was ever capable of thinking, let alone saying, something so cruel to the woman I love more than my own life." He gripped her hand tighter. "But Aaliyah, those words came from my brokenness, not from any truth about who you are. You have never been a burden. You've been my salvation, and I was too damaged to see it. When someone you love hurts you deeply, is forgiveness about them earning it, or about you choosing to heal? What do you think Aaliyah should do next? Let us know in the comments." As they drove home, the twins chatted excitedly in the back seat about their visit, but Aaliyah found herself lost in thought. The man she'd seen today was not the man who'd laughed at her in that courtroom. But was the change real? And even if it was, what did that mean for her future? That evening, after the twins were asleep, Aaliyah sat on her balcony overlooking Central Park, a glass of wine in her hand and her phone beside her. She'd been staring at Benjamin's contact information for an hour, debating whether to call. Finally, she pressed the number. "Aaliyah?" Benjamin's voice was surprised but hopeful. "The girls had a wonderful time today," she said. Good. Good, I'm so glad. They're incredible, Aaliyah. You've done such an amazing job with them." "Benjamin, I need to understand something. In there today, when you looked at me, when you saw me in my wheelchair, doing those maneuvers, what were you thinking?" A long pause. "I was thinking that I'm the biggest fool who ever lived." "What do you mean?" "I mean that watching you today, seeing how confident and capable and joyful you are, seeing how our daughters look at you like you're their superhero. I realized that you didn't become a different person after the accident. You became more yourself. More authentically, beautifully yourself." Aaliyah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I was thinking," Benjamin continued, his voice thick with emotion, "that you were never broken. I was so broken that I couldn't see the miracle I was married to. I couldn't see that strength isn't about walking or running or dancing. It's about getting up every day and choosing love over fear, hope over despair, faith over bitterness. Benjamin, I was thinking that if I could have one more chance, just one, I would spend every day for the rest of my life proving to you that you are not just enough. You are everything. You are more than I ever deserved, and more than I ever dared to dream of." The silence stretched between them, filled with years of pain and hope and possibility. "I've been offered a job," Aaliyah said suddenly. "What?" "Phoenix Tech Solutions, the company that bought Sterling Industries. They want me to head up their new nationwide wellness program. It would mean traveling, speaking at conferences, helping other companies develop inclusive workplace policies." "Aaliyah, that's incredible. You'd be amazing at that. It would also mean being away from New York for weeks at a time, which would make visits with you complicated." Another pause. "What are you saying?" Aaliyah took a deep breath. "I'm saying that I need to know if what I saw today was real. If the man who held our daughters and looked at me like I was his whole world, if that's who you really are now, or if that's who you think I want you to be. How can I prove that to you? I don't know. Maybe you can't. Maybe this is one of those leaps of faith that either works or it doesn't." Benjamin was quiet for so long that Aaliyah thought the call had dropped. "Aaliyah," he said finally, "I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider coming back? Just you next week." "Why?" "Because there's something I need to show you. Something I've been working on. And if after you see it, you decide to take that job and move on with your life, I'll understand. But I need you to know who I am now before you make that decision." Aaliyah stared out at the city lights, at the thousands of windows representing thousands of lives, thousands of people making choices about love and forgiveness and second chances. "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'll come." "Thank you," Benjamin whispered. "Thank you for believing I might be worth one more chance." As Aaliyah hung up the phone, she realized she was standing at the edge of the biggest leap of faith she'd ever taken. Not the faith that Benjamin had changed, She'd seen evidence of that today. But the faith that she was strong enough to risk her heart again. The faith that sometimes, the greatest love stories weren't about perfect people finding each other, but about broken people choosing to heal together. Aaliyah's hands trembled slightly as she signed in at the visitor's desk. This time, she'd come alone, leaving Isabella and Sophia with Mariah for the afternoon. The drive upstate had given her too much time to think, too much time to question whether she was making the right choice. Mrs. Sterling? Jennifer Walsh appeared with a warm smile. Benjamin asked me to meet you personally today. He's very excited about whatever he has planned. You don't know what it is? He's been working on something for months with Dr. Williams and the recreational therapy team, but it's been very hush-hush. All I know is that he reserved the recreation center for this afternoon. As they walked through the facility, Aaliyah noticed that other inmates and staff members smiled and nodded at her with what seemed like recognition. Word had apparently spread about her visits, about Benjamin's transformation, about their story. He's different than when he first arrived, Jennifer said quietly as they approached the recreation center. I've been supervising family visits for 12 years, and I've never seen such a complete personality change. Usually, there are glimpses of the old behavior, especially under stress. But Benjamin, it's like he's become an entirely different person. They stopped outside the recreation center doors. Are you ready? Aaliyah nodded, though her heart was racing. Jennifer opened the doors, and Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. The large room had been transformed. Soft lighting replaced the harsh fluorescence, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere. But what made her gasp was the music, their wedding song, At Last by Etta James, playing softly from hidden speakers. And there, in the center of the room, stood Benjamin. He'd somehow managed to get civilian clothes. A simple white button-down shirt and dark slacks that fit him perfectly. His hair was neatly styled, his beard trimmed, and in his hands he held a single white rose. "Hello, beautiful," he said softly as she entered. "Benjamin, what is this?" "This," he said, walking slowly toward her, "is me keeping a promise I made to you 3 years ago." Aaliyah's mind raced back to that night in the hospital, her tears about never dancing again, his whispered vow to dance for both of them if he had to. "I've been taking lessons," Benjamin continued, kneeling down beside her wheelchair so they were at eye level. "Carlos, the man I told you about, he's taught me everything he knows. But more than that, he taught me something Dr. Williams couldn't." "What's that?" "He taught me that dancing isn't about your feet. It's about your heart. And I realized that you never stopped dancing, Aaliyah. You just learned to dance differently." Benjamin stood and extended his hand to her. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Sterling?" Aaliyah felt tears streaming down her face as she took his hand. "Benjamin, I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "Trust me. Trust us." He helped her transfer from her wheelchair to a regular chair he'd positioned in the center of the room, then knelt in front of her again. Taking her hands in his, he began to move, not the complicated salsa moves she might have expected, but something simpler, more intimate. Their upper bodies swayed together to the music, his hands holding hers, guiding her movements in a dance that was theirs alone. It wasn't traditional, but it was beautiful, a dance of love and forgiveness, of two souls finding their rhythm again. "I love you," Benjamin whispered against her ear as they moved together. "I love your strength, your grace, your incredible heart. I love the way our daughters look at you like you can conquer the world, because you can. I love the woman you were, the woman you are, and the woman you're still becoming." Aaliyah was crying freely now, but they were tears of release, of healing, of a love she'd thought was lost forever. "But this isn't all," Benjamin said, pulling back to look into her eyes. "There's more." He helped her back into her wheelchair and wheeled her to a corner of the room where an easel stood covered with a cloth. "I've been working on something else," he said nervously. "With Dr. Williams's help and the approval of the warden, and, well, I'll just show you." He pulled away the cloth, revealing a detailed architectural drawing. "The Sterling Foundation for Adaptive Living," he said quietly. "A non-profit organization dedicated to providing resources, advocacy, and support for individuals with disabilities and their families." Aaliyah stared at the plans: state-of-the-art rehabilitation facilities, accessible housing projects, job training programs, research initiatives. Aaliyah took a deep breath. I'm saying that I need to know if what I saw today was real. If the man who held our daughters and looked at me like I was his whole world, if that's who you really are now, or if that's who you think I want you to be. How can I prove that to you? I don't know. Maybe you can't. Maybe this is one of those leaps of faith that either works or it doesn't. Benjamin was quiet for so long that Aaliyah thought the call had dropped. Aaliyah, he said finally, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider coming back? Just you next week. Why? Because there's something I need to show you. Something I've been working on. And if after you see it, you decide to take that job and move on with your life, I'll understand. But I need you to know who I am now before you make that decision. Aaliyah stared out at the city lights, at the thousands of windows representing thousands of lives, thousands of people making choices about love and forgiveness and second chances. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll come. Thank you, Benjamin whispered. Thank you for believing I might be worth one more chance. As Aaliyah hung up the phone, she realized she was standing at the edge of the biggest leap of faith she'd ever taken. Not the faith that Benjamin had changed. She'd seen evidence of that today. But the faith that she was strong enough to risk her heart again. The faith that sometimes, the greatest love stories weren't about perfect people finding each other, but about broken people choosing to heal together. Aaliyah's hands trembled slightly as she signed in at the visitor's desk. This time, she'd come alone, leaving Isabella and Sophia with Mariah for the afternoon. The drive upstate had given her too much time to think, too much time to question whether she was making the right choice. Mrs. Sterling? Jennifer Walsh appeared with a warm smile. Benjamin asked me to meet you personally today. He's very excited about whatever he has planned. You don't know what it is? He's been working on something for months with Dr. Williams and the recreational therapy team, but it's been very hush-hush. All I know is that he reserved the recreation center for this afternoon. As they walked through the facility, Aaliyah noticed that other inmates and staff members smiled and nodded at her with what seemed like recognition. Word had apparently spread about her visits, about Benjamin's transformation, about their story. He's different than when he first arrived, Jennifer said quietly as they approached the recreation center. I've been supervising family visits for 12 years, and I've never seen such a complete personality change. Usually, there are glimpses of the old behavior, especially under stress. But Benjamin, it's like he's become an entirely different person. They stopped outside the recreation center doors. Are you ready? Aaliyah nodded, though her heart was racing. Jennifer opened the doors, and Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. The large room had been transformed. Soft lighting replaced the harsh fluorescence, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere. But what made her gasp was the music, their wedding song, At Last by Etta James, playing softly from hidden speakers. And there, in the center of the room, stood Benjamin. He'd somehow managed to get civilian clothes. A simple white button-down shirt and dark slacks that fit him perfectly. His hair was neatly styled, his beard trimmed, and in his hands he held a single white rose. Hello, beautiful, he said softly as she entered. Benjamin, what is this? This, he said, walking slowly toward her, is me keeping a promise I made to you 3 years ago. Aaliyah's mind raced back to that night in the hospital, her tears about never dancing again, his whispered vow to dance for both of them if he had to. I've been taking lessons, Benjamin continued, kneeling down beside her wheelchair, so they were at eye level. Carlos, the man I told you about, he's taught me everything he knows. But more than that, he taught me something Dr. Williams couldn't. What's that? He taught me that dancing isn't about your feet. It's about your heart. And I realized that you never stopped dancing, Aaliyah. You just learned to dance differently. Benjamin stood and extended his hand to her. May I have this dance, Mrs. Sterling? Aaliyah felt tears streaming down her face as she took his hand. Benjamin, I can't. You can, he said firmly. Trust me. Trust us. He helped her transfer from her wheelchair to a regular chair he'd positioned in the center of the room, then knelt in front of her again. Taking her hands in his, he began to move, not the complicated salsa moves she might have expected, but something simpler, more intimate. Their upper bodies swayed together to the music, his hands holding hers, guiding her movements in a dance that was theirs alone. It wasn't traditional, but it was beautiful, a dance of love and forgiveness, of two souls finding their rhythm again. "I love you," Benjamin whispered against her ear as they moved together. "I love your strength, your grace, your incredible heart. I love the way our daughters look at you like you can conquer the world, because you can. I love the woman you were, the woman you are, and the woman you're still becoming." Aaliyah was crying freely now, but they were tears of release, of healing, of a love she'd thought was lost forever. "But this isn't all," Benjamin said, pulling back to look into her eyes. "There's more." He helped her back into her wheelchair and wheeled her to a corner of the room where an easel stood covered with a cloth. "I've been working on something else," he said nervously. "With Dr. Williams's help and the approval of the warden, and, well, I'll just show you." He pulled away the cloth, revealing a detailed architectural drawing. "The Sterling Foundation for Adaptive Living," he said quietly. "A non-profit organization dedicated to providing resources, advocacy, and support for individuals with disabilities and their families." Aaliyah stared at the plans: state-of-the-art rehabilitation facilities, accessible housing projects, job training programs, research initiatives. "The seed funding comes from my remaining assets after restitution," Benjamin explained. "Everything I have left, plus a percentage of any future earnings I ever make. But more than that, I want you to run it." "Benjamin, the Phoenix Tech job you mentioned, they've agreed to let you oversee their wellness program remotely while you build this foundation. You'd be helping not just their employees, but thousands of people across the country." Aaliyah's hands shook as she traced the architectural lines. "How did you?" "I've been in touch with Phoenix Tech's CEO, Maria Rodriguez. She thinks you're brilliant, by the way. When I told her about the foundation, she offered to be the first corporate sponsor." Benjamin knelt beside her again. "Aaliyah, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that the man who hurt you is gone, and the man who loves you is here to stay. What about your sentence?" Benjamin's smile was soft, hopeful. "Dr. Williams has recommended me for early release to a halfway house. If approved, I could be out in 6 months. The foundation work, my therapy progress, the judge who originally sentenced me has agreed to review my case." Aaliyah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering. Not just his love, but a chance to change thousands of lives, to turn their pain into purpose. "There's one more thing," Benjamin said, reaching into his pocket. "I know our marriage legally ended, and I know I have no right to ask this, but—" He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing not her original engagement ring, but something new, a beautiful solitaire surrounded by smaller stones in a setting designed to be comfortable for someone who uses their hands for wheelchair mobility. "Aaliyah Sterling, would you marry me again? Not because of who we used to be, but because of who we've become? Would you give me, one more chance to build the life we both deserve?" The recreation center fell silent, except for the soft music still playing. Aaliyah looked at the man kneeling before her. Not the arrogant CEO who'd laughed at her weakness, but a man humbled by his mistakes and transformed by love. "Yes," she whispered. Benjamin's face lit up with pure joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he was kissing her, really kissing her, for the first time in over 2 years. His hands cupped her face gently, and she could taste the salt of both their tears as their lips met. The kiss deepened, full of promise and passion, and the kind of love that survives even the worst storms. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. "I love you," Aaliyah said, the words feeling both new and ancient on her lips. "I love who you've become. I love who we could be together. I'm going to spend every day proving I deserve that love," Benjamin promised, his forehead resting against hers. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel sparkled with thousands of tiny lights, but nothing shone brighter than Aaliyah Sterling's smile as she sat in her chair at the head table. The Sterling Foundation's inaugural gala was in full swing, with over 500 guests celebrating the organization's first year of operation. "Mommy, you look like a princess," Isabella whispered, adjusting the small flower crown in her hair. She and Sophia were the evening's honorary co-chairs, their pictures prominently displayed in the program alongside stories of children thriving despite various challenges. "You both look like princesses," Aaliyah replied, smoothing Sophia's dress. The twins had insisted on matching emerald green dresses that complemented their mother's elegant gown. From across the room, Benjamin caught her eye and winked. He was working the crowd with the ease of a natural fundraiser, but she could see the difference in him. The genuine care in how he spoke to the foundation's clients, the respect with which he treated everyone from board members to hotel staff. His early release had been approved after an unprecedented recommendation from both his therapist and the warden. The halfway house program had transitioned smoothly into community service leadership, and now he split his time between foundation work and speaking at prisons about accountability and change. "Ladies and gentlemen," the evening's MC announced, "please welcome Benjamin and Aaliyah Sterling." They took the stage together, Benjamin walking beside Aaliyah's chair, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. The applause was thunderous. "A year ago," Aaliyah began, her voice clear and strong, "I thought my life was over. I thought that love couldn't survive the worst of human weakness, that some betrayals were too deep to heal from." She looked at Benjamin, who nodded encouragingly. "I was wrong. Love didn't just survive, it grew stronger. It grew into this foundation, into programs that have already helped over 2,000 families. It grew into advocacy that's changed workplace policies at 50 companies. It grew into proof that our most painful experiences can become our greatest sources of strength." Benjamin stepped forward to the microphone. "I stood in a courtroom 18 months ago and said cruel, unforgivable things about the woman I love. Tonight, I stand before you to say that Aaliyah Sterling is the strongest, most courageous person I've ever known. Her disability didn't make her less than she was. It revealed how extraordinary she'd always been." The applause was deafening as he continued. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the Sterling Foundation's success, but the truth that love can heal even the most broken places in our hearts. That families can be restored, that people can change, and that sometimes our greatest failures become the foundation for our most meaningful victories." As the formal program ended and dancing began, Benjamin helped Aaliyah transfer to a regular chair positioned on the dance floor. Their first public dance as a remarried couple drew everyone's attention, but Aaliyah felt only Benjamin's hands in hers, heard only their heartbeats synchronizing to the music. "No regrets?" Benjamin murmured as they swayed together. "Only one," Aaliyah replied, smiling up at him. "What's that?" "That it took us so long to find our way back to each other." Benjamin spun her chair gently, both of them laughing as the crowd cheered. "We found our way exactly when we were supposed to, beautiful. Not when we thought we deserved it, but when we were finally ready to receive it." Later that night, in their new apartment overlooking Central Park, designed to be completely accessible and filled with photos from their second wedding ceremony, Benjamin and Aaliyah lay together in the moonlight streaming through their bedroom windows. "The foundation got another major donation today," Aaliyah said, her head resting on Benjamin's chest. "Microsoft wants to fund the Adaptive Technology Program." "That's incredible," Benjamin replied, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "You're incredible." They made love slowly, tenderly, with the patience of two people who had learned not to take each other for granted. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a commitment to the future they were building together. "I have something to tell you," Aaliyah said afterward, her voice soft in the darkness. "What's that?" "Dr. Martinez thinks I'm ready to try experimental spinal therapy. There's a new procedure. It might not work, but there's a chance I could regain some sensation, maybe even limited mobility." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, and Aaliyah felt her heart flutter with uncertainty. "And," he said finally, "and I want you to know that whether it works or not, whether I stay in this chair or not, it doesn't change anything between us. I'm whole exactly as I am." Benjamin turned to face her fully, his eyes serious in the moonlight. "Aaliyah Sterling, You are the love of my life, whether you're in a wheelchair, walking, flying, or dancing on the ceiling. You taught me that love isn't about what someone can or can't do. It's about who they are in their heart. And your heart. God, your heart is the most beautiful thing I've ever known. He kissed her forehead gently. Whatever you decide about the therapy, I'll be right beside you. But I need you to know that you're not trying to fix anything for me. You're perfect exactly as you are. 2 years later, Isabella and Sophia Sterling, now 7 years old, stood on stage at their elementary school's talent show. The music began. The same Etta James song their parents had danced to at the foundation gala, and the twins began a routine they'd choreographed themselves. In the audience, Benjamin and Aaliyah watched with tears in their eyes as their daughters danced. One standing, one sitting in a child-sized wheelchair, moving in perfect harmony together. They're going to change the world, Benjamin whispered. They already have, Aaliyah replied, squeezing his hand. The experimental therapy had been partially successful. Aaliyah had regained some sensation and could walk short distances with assistance. But more importantly, she'd discovered that her worth had never been dependent on her mobility. She was exactly who she'd always been meant to be. The Sterling Foundation had grown into a national organization. Aaliyah's TED Talk about redefining strength had been viewed over 10 million times. Benjamin's prison speaking program had been adopted by facilities across the country. But their greatest success was the family they'd rebuilt. Not despite their brokenness, but because of their willingness to heal. As the twins took their bows, the entire auditorium rose in standing ovation. Isabella reached down to take Sophia's hand, and together they pointed to their parents in the audience. "We love you, Mommy and Daddy," they called out in unison. Benjamin and Aaliyah stood, she with her walker, he with his arm around her waist, and waved back at their daughters. Around them, other families applauded not just the performance, but the love story that had created it. A love story that proved the most beautiful dances weren't about perfect steps, but about choosing to move together through every season of life. A love story that proved sometimes the greatest victories come from the greatest falls, and the deepest love grows from the deepest forgiveness. A love story that proved that happy endings aren't about perfect people, but about imperfect people choosing to love perfectly.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.